What's up, everyone? I've been gone for some time, I know, but I've got some very good stuff for you guys today, so let's not waste any more time and get into it. My says, inconsistent mechanics.
Where?
If there's inconsistent mechanics, please
Elaborate.
because from what I know, the game's mechanics are incredibly consistent, even more so than Dark Souls 3, because you could basically forward roll every attack in that game. In Elden Ring, forward rolling doesn't always work, because attacks are made to punish dodging incorrectly. Edith says, wow, this game is terrible. It plays like it was created 20 years ago by someone in the soft year of their game development elective course. For one, I doubt you even know what that is, and the game is not terrible, it's really good. Majority rules and the majority in reviews to even winning Game of the Year agree that it's good. Nevermind says, one of the most disappointing games I played after Cyberpunk. I feel heartbroken. But Cyberpunk is good, and you're disappointed in a game with a dissimilar reception. Most people who played Elden Ring despite the problems loved it. The same can't be said for Cyberpunk that was far more unstable and broken with crashes to clipping out of bounds, which I can state as someone who's played Elden Ring on launch. I've never experienced such phenomena. I'm the one who's heartbroken here. James Oxford says, I completed Elden Ring on the PS5 back when it released almost 3 years ago. I had some reservations at the time, but decided to give it another go. This time on PC with a view to perhaps grab the DLC during the sale. Sadly, I don't feel like my opinion has changed, and I believe this to be a hugely disappointing game and full of questionable design choices and other surprising flaws. Firstly, the open world serves very little benefit or improvement to the Souls-like subgenre. It's beautiful at times, but ultimately bland and boring. There's actually no real sense of discovery, and traversing areas can feel really exhausting even with the mount. From Software have gone from stunningly crafted intertwining environments to essentially making a run-of-the-mill open world plagued with filler and barren areas. Bosses have also lost their FromSoft's uniqueness, as this game is bloated with them, and many just recycled mini-boss repeats. The biggest problem is a lot have invincibility frames, rely on invisible walls for defensive protection, and have seemingly unlimited stamina, allowing for almost relentless attacks that you can barely telegraph or counter in full. The majority of bosses are challenging, but for very cheap reasons. It's not just beautiful at times, it is an incredibly beautiful game with an unmatched style of somber quality. It's not boring at all, and the sense to explore is all over the game if you actually care to do so, which I'll just guess that you didn't.
But
Then I ask,
why?
did you buy an open world game if you did not want to play it? Traversing areas isn't exhausting with the mount. All you're doing is playing a video game. There's no reason for you to feel exhausted because you aren't the one running. It's either your character or your horse, which have no exhaustion out of combat. You can spam horse sprint out of combat. If you feel exhausted, that's simply because you personally have no drive to explore, and that is not fault of the game, as this is the literal first Souls game to ever be open world, so the sense of exploration and discovery is very much there. Even for people who've never played a Souls game, there is, or there wouldn't be millions of people who have played the game. Bosses have not lost their uniqueness. Sure, there's a lot of them, but that's like saying the main bosses in Elden Ring are just repeats of bosses from other Souls games, which they aren't. A prime fucking example is literally Margit, the Fell Omen. He's completely unique and feels fresh because his attacks are slowed down, because FromSoft knew returning players would easily kill him if he didn't have an unpredictable attack set. Sure, after you beat him, he's easy to predict in the future, but the first time is very difficult, and it's supposed to be. And so many others. Never seen Godric until Elden Ring. Never seen summons used in other games, which Renala uses to fight you off. Though her spells not unique exactly, her design and arena are. Never fought someone as absolutely unique as Millennia. Invincibility frames? Invisible walls? Are you actually
Fucking serious? Unlimited stamina?
Did you take your brain out of your skull? This is some of the most absolutely ridiculous shit I've ever heard. You literally no idea what you're talking about. Go throw your brain out some more. I'm moving on. Nerdvana says, what is the deal with this big picture nonsense? Alright, enough. This is a problem with Steam, not Elden Ring.
Change your review.
GTWL says, lovely game. Graphics, bosses, battle mechanics, all amazing. However, the majority of my time was spent on trying to find out what the hell I was supposed to do. Everything's just so unreasonably complicated that you can figure out the main story just to go become a real wizard. Spent hours upon hours just trying to get slightly better armor and slightly better weapons over and over again for an ending that achieved a whole bunch of nothing. This really could have been a masterpiece, but sadly these flaws make it, I'll say it, literally unplayable. Elden Ring has a tutorial. If you miss the tutorial Grace, when you first light a Grace, it will tell you about Grace and how it works. Grace leads you toward the direction you need to go. Keep lighting Grace until you eventually find Melina, who will tell you that Grace guides you you, and that will lead you towards Stormveil Castle. The story is overall pretty straightforward if you actually pay attention and listen to the NPCs who are there to shed light on what caused the shattering, which made the lands between into what it is when you arrived. The ending did not achieve nothing. It's supposed to not only be a sense of accomplishment for overcoming hard trials, but also that you mended the Elden Ring, which then repaired the damage to the lands between. It goes deeper than that, but that is the basis.
You are the problem here.
Hex Italian says, FromSoft continues in a direction I wish they wouldn't. They abandoned their well thought out, small scale level and combat design, instead favoring excess and bloat to the point where it stops being fun. I miss DS2 more than ever. Bosses with natural, readable attacks and absence of particle effect spam and an open concept level design that still felt deliberate, compared to the emptiness of ER's open world. They aren't continuing in that direction exactly. You can't base that when the bottom line is, this is their first open world title, which,
By the way,
was a massive success. Also, you shouldn't be talking about
fucking Dark Souls 2.
when it comes to excess and bloat because it was criticized just like Elden Ring was for the amount of bosses it had. But Dark Souls 2 is effectively so much
Worse
than Elden Ring in terms of gameplay that even if Elden Ring has lots of bosses, all of its absolute positives make it light years better than Dark Souls 2 ever was or will be. Mr. Bubbles says, really disappointed in this game. As someone who has been a fan of Dark Souls since the beginning, these gems were so rich in detail and made perfectly start to finish mixed with iconic music. Elden Ring reused a lot of bosses and enemies and lacked with epic soundtracks. This game just felt so empty to me. Elden Ring is absolutely rich in detail. It isn't perfect and sure did reuse enemies and certain bosses, but holy fucking balls. This game has one of the best Souls soundtracks. It does not lack epicness at fucking all. In fact, it goes so fucking hard, you should be laughed at for this take. In fact, we are laughing at you because this take is so fucking awful. Fats Jim says, there's a lot to like about this game, but there's also a lot to dislike and even hate too. This game is mostly great looking, huge, and full of detail. The combat is slow and sluggish. You have to cue your hits sometimes, which makes for slow responses. Bosses are ridiculous for the most part, which is good sometimes, but dying 100 times just to find a strategy that works is tiresome. I wish the combat was more responsive so that it could be more about combinations and less about some luck. Leveling is not satisfying for a while in the game, and putting points in talents doesn't normally yield much of a noticeable difference. The game questing is not great. You have to remember what you were told when given a quest because there's no record of it in the game to look at later. So if you put the game on for a while, probably out of frustration, you may not remember what you were supposed to do or go, and there isn't a clear goal given at the beginning. Overall, I like some of the challenges this game offers, but I don't think this is a great game because of the negatives. Nah, there's absolutely nothing to hate about this game. The combat is slow because that's how it is supposed to be. However, this talk about queuing hits is fucking bullshit. You do not queue hits. This would mean that it would take forever to land a hit, which it is not that slow. Not even fucking remotely. You press a button and it does the fucking action. What else could you ask for? Just because it's too slow for you doesn't mean you're queuing hits, and the responses in Elden Ring are faster than even Dark Souls 3. You think Elden Ring is slow? Bro, you legitimately have nothing to base that on because maybe if you played Dark Souls 1 you would, but alas, I am absolutely positive you have not. If you die 100 times to find a strategy, that is your fault for continuing to try when you are too underpowered. Do people just forget that Elden Ring is an action RPG? Leveling up and finding buffs to improve yourself for fights is part of the whole concept. Combat is not about luck, and it never has been. You suck so badly at this game that you need to hide behind queuing hits and slow combat. The combat is incredibly responsive as it always has been. And
there are combinations.
more accurately, combos. And it's just, they're short because this isn't some fucking fighting game, this is Elden Ring. Putting points into talents regardless if noticeable do absolutely make a difference, and it's enough for you to win fights in the game, so you should do it. Finally, a point where you aren't completely out of your ass. But, can you tell my problem here? Well, can you? You put down the game out of frustration? Sounds like a skill issue, I'ma be real. This whole review has been you whining and complaining about the game being designed this way intentionally. You have a skill issue at adapting to another game's formula. There is absolutely a clear goal given at the beginning. Follow Grace because a tutorial about Grace comes on the screen the moment you touch one, so actually fucking read it. When you follow the Grace, it leads you to a girl named Melina, who tells you some things and gives you Torrent. Then you find out you should go towards Stormveil Castle, and she hopes you would become Elden Lord, which is your overarching goal. I bet you got there, but you know what I also bet? That those 100 times you died side was towards Margit, which
By the way,
is the literal first main boss, which also makes him the easiest one. These things you consider negatives are only negatives to you. A majority of this you misconstrued to fit your narrative. Majority of players think the game's difficulty is fine, and a majority of Souls fans will say that Elden Ring is the easiest of them all because it straight up is. Ryan the Void says, not fucking fun. Yeah, you sound like you know what you're talking about. Vincent Pepler says, game sucks. Yeah, I agree. Considering you have 139.1 hours, it must absolutely suck. Bat Fastard says, this is overwhelmingly, definitively, absolutely the shittiest, most terrible game to play on PC. This is
overwhelmingly, definitively, absolutely the best, most great game to play on PC.
You are maidenless.
Hello, it's me says, my wife left me, my dog left me, my cat left me, my children left me, my husband left me, now all I have is Elden Ring. But was it worth it? Yes, it was absolutely worth it. FJ says, new boss design ruined the game. You went from having a sense of accomplishment to just being relieved it's finally over. Nah, just get good. Sikuchek2 says, I would recommend this game for most people. It is beautiful and sad. Well done. The gameplay, however, is much too one-sided, especially for an older player such as myself, 77, and not allowing an easy play mode really limits the people who can play and most of all enjoy this game. Balance is also important. It's a little daunting to have everything thrown at you in tunnels, but mainly just in the easy mode would be nicer for some of us older people. So as I would not recommend this game for myself, but would for younger adults who can remember every boss's moves and abilities. Thank you for allowing to express my opinion. Yes, thank you for recommending it. So why exactly did you not recommend it? You do know that negative reviews means to not recommend something, right? It even says it right here.
Not recommended.
A recommendation is always towards others when you review something, so if you recommend something, you should not leave a negative review as it completely gives the wrong impression since the negative review number goes up. The gameplay is not one-sided because you control it. I think you're talking about the combat, which even then, it is sided towards both the player and the enemy. In fact, Elden Ring is the most fair towards the player than any other Souls game because it allows the use of summons, items which include buffs, weapon arts which can buff, incantations which can buff, shields which can block damage, and great shields that can block even better since there's an actual stat for how much guard a shield gives now. There's so many ways you could have it easier for yourself, including leveling up. You also said it's a little daunting to have everything thrown at you, which doesn't happen by the way. You have to move towards the enemies for them to notice you. Clearly you must have aggroed them. I know that you're 77, but it doesn't excuse your clear lapse in judgment. Bottom line is, if you recommend something,
Do not leave a negative review as it does the opposite.
that is the last response of the day. Hopefully you enjoyed watching this video and it changes what you would think of Elden Ring if you dislike it, because honestly and truly, Elden Ring is a good game and deserves a good chance and playthrough. If you play it, actually give it time, read the tutorials, and genuinely play the game the normal way like anyone else would. You don't need to prove yourself to anyone by playing a game and beating it. I'm only spreading the message of what a good game is. Hope you all have a wonderful day.